Welcome back, viewers. You're watching WION World is One. This is World DNA, the show that gets you ahead of the rest. I'm Shivan Jarna.
And I'm Raisha Sehgal. On World DNA today, we continue to track what is happening in West Asia. Now, despite a 21-day ceasefire plan proposed by the US and France in coordination with Israel, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's office has issued a firm denial on the proposal. Netanyahu has clearly said that Israel will continue striking Hezbollah with full force. The question now is, where does this Lebanon ceasefire deal stand now, and how will it impact US-Israel ties? We will be tracking that on the show today.
Also on World DNA, former US President Donald Trump has said that he would meet with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, and this comes just one day after he slammed Zelensky for refusing to strike a deal with Russia over the ongoing Russia-Ukraine war. This will be the first meeting between the two leaders since Trump left office. We will be delving into that closely as well. Let's get you started with the headlines.
The White House claims it had coordinated with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on the 21-day ceasefire plan in Lebanon, as Netanyahu rejects proposal and says Israel will continue to strike Hezbollah with full force.
Israeli strike on Beirut kills head of Hezbollah's drone unit as Lebanon says 92 people killed in strikes on the fourth day of escalations. IDF intercepts missile fired from Yemen across central Israel.
Former US President Donald Trump says he would meet Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, and this comes day after he slammed Ukraine's leader for refusing to strike a deal with Russia over the war.
Myanmar's ruling military urges its armed opponents to abandon what it calls terrorism and join the political fold by registering to contest a general election next year.
India's weather department predicts heavy rainfall across Konkan region and parts of Maharashtra state today. Mumbai city records 170 millimeters of rain in a 24-hour period.
Red Bull owned drops Daniel Ricciardo and drafts New Zealander Liam Lawson as the Australians' replacement for the remainder of the Formula One season.
Israel has rejected the US-backed proposal for a ceasefire with Hezbollah, and this even as Washington insisted the truce plan was coordinated with Israel.
Well, the United States and allies issued a joint call for a 21-day halt in fighting in Lebanon after Israeli airstrikes targeted the Iran-backed group, and it killed hundreds and displaced tens of thousands, which all happened earlier this week. Now, the White House said that the ceasefire offer had been coordinated with Israel before it was announced.
Israel was aware of this statement. And now, what I can tell you right now, we are having continued discussions that is happening with our teams in New York. And I'm not going to get into private diplomatic engagement, but I can assure you these conversations are continuing.
But landing in the US to address the UNGA, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said his government has not responded to the proposal. He said he has ordered the military to continue fighting with full force against Hezbollah until all goals are achieved.
During the flight, I gave approval for the elimination of the head of the UAV unit and other things, and he was eliminated. Our policy is clear. We are continuing to strike Hezbollah with full force, and we will not stop until we reach all our goals. Chief among them, the return of the residents of the north securely to their homes.
Netanyahu's statement came hours after Israel's National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir threatened to withdraw the support of his party from the coalition government if Netanyahu agreed to a ceasefire in Lebanon. Meanwhile, French President Emmanuel Macron said it will be a mistake for Israeli Prime Minister to refuse a ceasefire in Lebanon. He noted that the plan supported by the United States and the EU had been prepared with Netanyahu himself.
Furthermore, hundreds of pro-Palestinian demonstrators gathered in New York and walked towards the United Nations headquarters on Thursday. And that is ahead of Netanyahu's address at the United Nations.
Earlier, U.S. Senator Bernie Sanders introduced legislation to block arms sales to Israel. The joint resolutions of disapproval will prevent the transfer of more than $20 billion in offensive weapons to Israel. The Senate will vote on the resolutions when lawmakers reconvene in November. Sanders accused Israel of waging an all-out war against the Palestinian people.
And well, for more on this, we're now being joined by Dov Zakim from Washington, D.C. He's a senior advisor at Center for Strategic and International Studies. He's joining us live from Washington, D.C. Welcome to World DNA, Mr. Zakim. Now, it is a new phase of war in West Asia. Just yesterday, there was a 21-day ceasefire plan proposed by U.S. and France. And according to the White House, it was backed by the Israeli Prime Minister. But upon his arrival in New York for the UNGA, he clearly said that he wants Israel to fight with Hezbollah with full force. What led to this backtracking by the Israeli Prime Minister?
Well, it's not really clear. First of all, thank you for having me. It's not clear that Netanyahu backtracked in this case. It's quite different from Gaza, where he's clearly been not interested in any kind of arrangement that would free hostages and have a ceasefire. As you heard the American spokesman say, the Israelis were aware of the offer. That's very different from accepting. And it's clear that Netanyahu, not only because of Ben-Gvir, I mean, he's got the public behind him, he does not want to accept it, and there are some very good reasons for him not to. 21 days is not going to stop Hezbollah from firing rockets and drones. They've already fired 10,000 since October 7th in starting a conflict that is not theirs. It's a Gaza conflict, driving out 60 to 70,000 people. Of course, Netanyahu is going to want his people to come back home. And by the way, in addition, which no one seems to talk about, Security Council Resolution 1701 made it very clear that Hezbollah should not have any of its forces south of the Litani River, which, of course, they have violated over and over again. So it's not just the extreme right-wingers who I've been arguing, including on this channel, that have blocked any kind of arrangement on Gaza, which is sorely needed. This has less to do with them. They're just showboating. It has much more to do with the sentiment of Israelis who feel that all these rockets and missiles that have been fired at them, including one that was fired from Iraq at Tel Aviv, they feel the Iranians are just trying to press them every which way, and they just don't want to put up with it.
Mr. Zakim, I heard what you said, and you've said that, they've not backtracked, and you're denying that fact that, this is not a backtracking. I just want to quote something that John Kirby said, that I don't know why Netanyahu said what he said. and I don't know what his considerations were, whether they were political or operational. Ask him why he said that. Now, this is, of course, this is the statement coming in from the US. Of course, they have been adamant that they would like to have the ceasefire in place. If I were to get your response to this coming in from the US.
Well, again, what John Kirby, who's a very, very decent man, I've known him for years, he did not say that the Israelis accepted and then backtracked. What he said was he couldn't understand why they wouldn't accept it. That's a very, very different approach. And again, as the other spokesperson put it, they were aware of the deal. Now, it's quite possible that by not speaking out quickly enough, Netanyahu gave the impression he was willing to go along with it. But again, it just doesn't make sense. 21 days is not going to get 70,000 people home. What they need is a long-term ceasefire. I'm not saying that Hezbollah should disappear. That's a whole other issue. But they need a long-term ceasefire. They need to allow the Lebanese people who've been displaced to go home and the Israelis to go home. 21 days is not going to do either of those.
Right, Mr. Zakim, you say 21 days is not going to let the displaced people from both the sides return back to their places. Then what, according to you, is a feasible plan? And I also want to seek your assessment that Netanyahu's conduct over the Lebanon ceasefire deal, do you think it was just an extension of how he has handled the Gaza hostage talks? And what kind of an effect will this have on the Gaza ceasefire deal as well?
Well, it's very different. The circumstances are really quite different from those in Gaza. As I said, I personally believe that he could have cut a deal on Gaza months and months ago. Here we're talking about an attack that continues, that Hezbollah has continued to fire rockets and missiles at Israeli civilians. He's the prime minister. He's got to look after his people. Now, how long a ceasefire should last? A ceasefire should last until both sides, the people of both sides, the innocent people of both sides, are able to go back to their homes. And at that point, maybe there's some way of working out some kind of arrangement. I mean, after all said and done, Hezbollah had not gone to war with Israel for quite a number of years for some very good reasons. And there's no reason to assume that they would go to war again. But the key is, however long it takes to get people home on both sides, that's how long the ceasefire should last.
All right, Mr. Zakim, I hear your points. Thank you so much for joining us. Of course, the US still seems a little taken aback why Netanyahu has not agreed to it. As you mentioned, it was initially made clear that Israel is aware of the deal, so there was no agreement. Of course, this is something now, it only mounts pressure on the US because now they have two ceasefire deals to achieve on both fronts of Israel. Thank you so much for joining us. There'll be lots more to discuss. We'd love to have you on the show again.
Thank you for having me.
The temporary ceasefire proposed by the United States, France and the Allies calls for a 21-day pause in fighting between Israel and Hezbollah.
Well, they've called on Israel, Lebanon and Hezbollah to adhere to a settlement based on the UN Security Council Resolution 1701. Resolution 1701 set out the ceasefire terms for the 2006 war in Lebanon. On the 12th of August 2006, the United Nations Security Council unanimously voted for this resolution. It was soon approved by the Lebanese and Israeli cabinets as well. At that time, Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah also said that the group would honor the call for a ceasefire.
The resolution calls for a full cessation of hostilities between Israel and Hezbollah. The terms also includes the withdrawal of Israeli forces from Lebanon to be replaced by Lebanese and UN peacekeeping forces in Lebanon, it's known as UNIFIL in southern Lebanon. It also calls for the disarmament of any armed groups, including Hezbollah. It says that no armed forces other than UNIFIL and the Lebanese military should be deployed south of the Litani River, which flows about 29 kilometers north of the border.
The resolution also emphasizes Lebanon's need to exert full government control. It also reiterates the respect for a UN demarcated blue line that separated the two countries and the Golan Heights. The ceasefire under this began on 14th of August 2006. However, Resolution 1701's terms were never fully enforced. For years, Lebanon and Israel blamed each other for countless violations. Hezbollah's power has meanwhile grown, both in its arsenal and as a political influence in the Lebanese parliament. Israel's deadly assault on Hezbollah targets in Lebanon, as well as signaling a potential ground invasion in the country, is igniting fears among key stakeholders in the region.
Even as they advocate the cause of Palestinians as well as a two-state solution, their overwhelming worry is of being drawn into a war they do not want. Well, WION's assistant editor of Foreign Affairs, Sudan spoke to officials from Egypt on the impact of the war on their country. And Egypt shares a 206-kilometer long border with Israel and a 12-kilometer long border with Gaza. During the 1948 Palestine War, more than 700,000 Palestinians were displaced. Many of them sought refuge in neighboring Jordan, Egypt and Lebanon. Well, no one wants to see that situation again. Take a look.
Israel should also try to be, I would say, wise enough in order, because, you know, if they will invade South Lebanon now, I think they will bear a lot of casualties, and they're still suffering from the campaign against Gaza. So I guess it will not be a right decision from the Israeli army or the Israeli prime minister to go for another war in the north. I think this will mean, a lot of casualties for the Israelis, and this will affect the internal situation in Israel and the future of the prime minister.
Hezbollah is fighting a just war. Hezbollah is part of the national legitimate resistance against the Israeli occupation. And Hezbollah is talking all the time about the fact that what he is fighting for is the cessation of fire in Gaza Strip.
It's our national security is at stake. We face a dilemma because we do not want to go into war. We do not want the Palestinians to be pushed away as refugees again in Egypt, reiterating what happened in 1948. We don't want that at all. This is a recipe for liquidating the Palestinian cause.
As the war in Ukraine enters a critical phase, the nation finds itself battered on multiple fronts. President Zelensky's victory plan isn't getting much support from the Biden administration.
Right, Shivan. Our next report explains how the biggest setback for Kiev comes from Donald Trump, who is expected to meet Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky later in the day. Take a look.
Kramatorsk, Kharkiv, Kherson, and Kyiv. Ukrainian cities are crumbling under relentless Russian bombardment. Missiles are raining down on Ukrainian cities, leaving behind a trail of destruction and death. Russia's precision-guided bombs and glide bombs are tearing through Ukraine's defenses. On the battlefields of eastern Ukraine, waves of Russian attacks are decimating Western-supplied Ukrainian weapons. As the battlefield situation deteriorates, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is in the US seeking more support from his allies. The US, France and the UK are all promising more aid.
To make it clear, we stand with Ukraine, now and in the future. That starts on the battlefield. I'm determined to ensure that Ukraine has what it needs to prevail in its fight for its survival.
But Zelensky's much-touted victory plan is meeting skepticism in Washington. The Biden administration views it as little more than a rehash of earlier requests for more weapons, including long-range missiles, and is hesitant to offer a full endorsement. The most stinging blow to Ukraine's morale, however, has come from Donald Trump, who describes Ukraine as dead.
If we had a president who was intelligent, we could have made a deal easily. But what do you have left now? Right? 3 years of horrible fighting. The country is absolutely obliterated. Millions and millions of people, including all of these great soldiers, they're dead.
The former US president's remarks raise questions about how much support Ukraine might receive from a future Trump administration should he return to the Oval Office. With time running out before the November US elections and the battlefield situation growing increasingly grim, Kyiv finds itself desperately short of options. The once defiant nation now faces an uncertain future, caught between relentless Russian aggression and waning international resolve. Bureau Report, WION World is One.
Sudan is again in a state of crisis. A war that had never ended is marking a new turning point.
On Thursday, the army bombarded parts of the capital to force the paramilitary out. And just like before, civilians are paying the price. Here's a report. Take a look.
Ravished by decades of conflict, Sudan that sits in northern Africa is once again caught in brutal gunfire and politics. The Sudanese army has launched a major offensive in capital city of Khartoum. The aim is to regain territories from the Rapid Support Forces. Witnesses reported heavy bombardments and clashes across the Nile River.
The Rapid Support Forces have continued to act as outlaws, and their war of aggression has continued against my country, including the property of our people. This was a regional war imposed upon my country. It is not a civil war.
Sudan has a complicated power structure. For the longest time, the Sudanese army worked hand in hand with the RSF. They fought rebellions inside the country and wars outside. In a 2020 coup jointly executed by the military and the RSF, the army chief, Lieutenant General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, made himself the de facto leader. 4 months later, a joint military-civilian council was agreed upon. It was meant to govern Sudan for the next 3 years till elections were held. That is when things started to unravel. The army demanded the RSF be integrated into the regular army forces. That exposed a slew of differences. There is a power struggle between Army Chief Lieutenant General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan and RSF's General Mohammed Hamdan Dagalo. Both claim to be Commander-in-Chief. Fighting broke out in the capital last year between the two forces and hasn't ended ever since.
Both parties are responsible. Both parties must eliminate barriers to humanitarian access along all routes.
The bloody civil war has caused a dire humanitarian crisis. Over 20,000 people have lost their lives since last year. Sudan is the world's largest hunger crisis, with over half of the country's population facing acute hunger. Famine has been confirmed in North Darfur. At least 10 million people have been displaced from their homes and 2 million have fled to the neighboring nations.
We all agreed last year too, exactly in this place at this same event. However, violence has not stopped. I can frankly hardly think of any other conflict where our by now chronic inability to bring about peace is so much in evidence.
What this new offensive will bring for the people remains to be seen. But despite this series of conflicts, Sudanese people hold on to resilience. They keep rebuilding their lives and nation only for a new crisis to tear everything down. Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
And it's time now for a quick short break.
Don't go anywhere. This is World DNA. On the other side, more reports coming in. Heavy rains lash India's financial hub Mumbai and its suburbs, inundating low-lying areas and affecting transport as well. Prime Minister Modi cancels his visit to Pune after the city witnesses a deluge.
And also on the show, India's defence production has reached an all-time high of 1.27 lakh crore rupees in 2023 and 2024, a major milestone driven by the Make in India initiative. All that and a lot more lined up. Stay with us. You're watching WION The World is One.
Know more, understand better, think ahead. Hello and a very warm welcome. You are watching Gravitas with me, Molly Gambhir. Get the facts, not the bombast. On the 26th of March, dynamic pricing, Baloch separatists, Gravitas cuts out the clutter. Gravitas keeps calm when others scream. Gravitas brings news to life. Weekdays 9 p.m. IST, 3:30 p.m. GMT. Gravitas. Seeing is believing.
From the bustling trading floors of Wall Street to the vibrant exchanges of Asian stock markets, WION breaks it down for you to make sense of what's happening. As we reveal the key factors behind events, strategic battles, and the game-changing business decisions that shape the world. We bring you all of this and more on World Business Watch.
To bring the benefits of the Subhash Chandra Show to your educational institution, teachers and students, send an invitation to Juhi Jha at juhi@such.org.in.
Coldplay announces its India tour, and we take a look at the ticket frenzy, the sustainability drives, and everything else that follows the announcement. Meet Team Lapata Ladies as the movie becomes India's official Oscar entry.
कल रात को विदा करा के वापस लौट रहा था, तो रास्ता में इसकी बीबी खो गई.
And take a look at the recently arrested rapper Sean Diddy Combs' criminal timeline. All this and much more with me, Isha Hanspal, at these times only on WION World is One.
Everyone loves a contest. But sport isn't just about victory and defeat. When the GOATs in sport speak, you hear it first on WION.
You have to play good cricket over a period of time.
I actually pushed myself right out of the damn tournament.
We go beyond the stats. Our stories are quoted the world over.
At WION, sport is part of our DNA. Come, join us on this journey. Weekdays 6:30 p.m. IST, 1 p.m. GMT.
Welcome back, viewers. You're watching World DNA with Rahesha and I'm Shivan. Lots to discuss on this side of the show as well. Let's get you started with the headlines. The White House claims it had coordinated with Israeli Prime Minister on the 21-day ceasefire plan in Lebanon as Netanyahu rejects proposal and says Israel will continue to strike Hezbollah with full force.
Israeli strike on Beirut kills head of Hezbollah's drone unit as Lebanon says 92 people killed in strikes on fourth day of escalations. IDF intercepts missile fired from Yemen across central Israel.
Former US President Donald Trump says he would meet Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky day after he slammed Ukraine's leader for refusing to strike a deal with Russia over the war.
Myanmar's ruling military urges its armed opponents to abandon what it calls terrorism and join the political fold by registering to contest a general election next year.
Hurricane Helene strengthens to an extremely dangerous Category 4 storm as it barreled towards landfall on the Florida coast.
India's weather department predicts heavy rainfall across Konkan region and parts of Maharashtra state today. Mumbai city records 170 millimeters of rain in a 24-hour period.
It was a day of upsets at the Japan Open. Top seed Taylor Fritz, third seed Casper Ruud, fourth seed Stefano Tsitsipas and seventh seed Francis Tiafoe have all crashed out of the tournament. Myanmar's junta leaders have extended an invitation to the country's armed rebel groups for talks in the historic outreach marks the first such attempt.
But military leaders ever since the coup in 2021. Junta leaders urged the military government's opponents to abandon what the state has referred to as terrorism. The military leaders have urged their rivals to enter the political arena and contest the elections next year.
In 2021, the military ousted Aung San Suu Kyi's elected civilian government and justified the coup, alleging that elections in 2020 were riddled with fraud. The upheaval triggered nationwide protests, which were followed by a brutal crackdown. The coup also led to a full-fledged civil war between the junta and armed rebel groups. In the past 3 years, the junta has lost control of several regions of Myanmar. The sweeping change in Bangladesh's political landscape has drawn mixed reactions from people in the country.
But Rohingya refugees who escaped to Bangladesh back in 2017, the expectations from Muhammad Yunus and his interim government are high, while many are hoping that Hasina's ouster and a change in power dynamics will perhaps shine the light on their problems. Take a look.
I'm more hopeful now. We saw on Facebook and YouTube that already many of our community leaders who live abroad had interactions with them and met them in some places. Now I hope Yunus will take care of us more than before.
As long as we are here in the camp, we want the government to allow us to study until grade 12 here, because some of us have money while some don't have enough. If the government increases the number of schools, we will be very grateful. That's what we want.
Dr. Yunus has friendships with other countries like France and America. Now, whatever he does, I hope it will solve our problems. That's what we want from him.
My appeal to Mr. Yunus is to provide us with food. We would be grateful if he can ensure our nationality in Myanmar also. But as long as we can't return there, if he can give us proper security here in the camps, we would remain grateful to him.
Heavy rains have lashed India's financial hub, Mumbai, and its suburbs, inundating low-lying areas and affecting local trains, traffic and even flights.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi, who was scheduled to visit Pune, has cancelled his visit to the city in the wake of heavy rain. While the incessant rain triggered waterlogging, leading to traffic snarls across the city, at least 4 people were killed in the heavy downpour across Mumbai metropolitan region.
India's Weather Department said that its Santa Cruz station recorded 170.3 millimeters of rain in a span of 24 hours, which was 47% of Mumbai's average monthly quota of rainfall in the month of September. That stands at 359 millimeters.
According to the IMD records, Mumbai had recorded 286.4 millimeters of rainfall on the 24th of September 2020. On 24th of September 2019, Mumbai recorded 242.5 mm, while on 20th September 2017, Mumbai had recorded 303.7 mm of rainfall. For the record, the wettest September day ever had been recorded back in 1981 with an extremely heavy spell of 318.2 mm recorded within 24 hours in September of that year.
Meanwhile, the IMD has issued an orange alert for Mumbai city and suburbs, predicting thunderstorms accompanied with lightning and heavy to very heavy rainfall, with gusty winds reaching 40 to 50 km per hour in the area. In view of the heavy rainfall alert, schools and colleges have been shut in several districts, and rail traffic in Mumbai has also resumed.
A day after heavy rains battered the city, inundating low-lying areas, halting local trains in their tracks and forcing diversions of at least 14 incoming flights. Of course, it left Mumbai waiting to get going again. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi launched 3 supercomputers called Param Rudra.
These computers are worth 130 crore rupees, which is roughly about $15 million, and will be deployed in Pune, Delhi, Kolkata. They will help in pioneering scientific research and will also help in fields such as science, healthcare and space research.
Apart from this, Prime Minister Modi inaugurated 2 high-performance computing systems, Arka and Arunika. They are made for weather and climate research. These systems are worth 850 crore rupees, which is roughly about $101 million, and will be deployed in Noida and Pune. The computers, as well as high-performance computing systems, have been developed indigenously under the National Supercomputing Mission. The mission is jointly managed by the Department of Science and Technology and the Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology.
Hailing the launch as a very big achievement, Prime Minister Modi stressed that with the supercomputers and high-performance computing systems, India is taking major steps towards self-reliance in computing and driving innovation in science and technology.
India's defence production has reached an all-time high of 1.27 lakh crore rupees in 2023-24, a significant milestone driven by the Make in India initiative.
Defence Minister Rajnath Singh highlighted that India is now exporting military hardware to over 90 countries. The Indian armed forces are increasingly reliant on domestically manufactured weapons. Over the past decade, India's domestic defence procurement has exceeded 0.6 million rupees, underscoring the push towards local manufacturing.
In 2023-24, India's defence exports surpassed 21,000 crore rupees for the first time. The government aims to increase this figure to 50,000 crore rupees by 2029. Defence exports are projected to grow 18% annually till 2030. India's defence manufacturing sector is further bolstered by an increase in the FDI limit to 74% under the automatic route.
India's defence sector is predicted to see major growth in the coming few years. The Defence Ministry has set a target of achieving 1.75 lakh crore rupees turnover in the next 5 years. While India remains one of the largest importers of arms globally, these measures aim to reduce dependence on foreign platforms. Despite this, India's defence expenditure still accounts for just 10% of US spending and 27% of China's defence budget. The US Federal Reserve's decision to cut rates by a big margin 7 weeks before the vote has it fielding criticism from both political parties, that's the Republicans and Democrats.
Now, it is in the Fed's best interest to keep its distance from politics. However, the Fed's daring move to boost the economy in the weeks leading up to the high-stakes election comes into the spotlight. Take a look at this next report.
Borrowing costs in the US were cut by 0.5 percentage point on September 18th. That is a bigger than usual move. This was motivated by a clear economic rationale since inflation has been under control and the labour market is losing momentum. However, the first rate cut in 4 years comes at an awkward time for policymakers. This is right before a presidential election where voters' opinions on the economy might make or break the race. The Fed often stresses that monetary policy has a lag. So, the decision this month will not have a major impact on employment or investment patterns until after the election on November 5th. But it may enhance market sentiment and the mood of regular Americans. This would likely be great for a Democratic campaign that is hoping to ride the wave of economic optimism. Christina Parajon-Skinner, an associate professor at the Wharton School who studies central banks, said the risk is that cutting rates will improve the economy and it will look to a lot of people, a lot of bystanders, a lot of lay people, like the Fed is trying to improve the economy before the election to help one of the candidates win. The Fed's move has already drawn some flack. Republican candidate Donald Trump hinted that the Fed might be playing politics. However, that is a fairly mild critique by his past standards. Some Democrats have sniped at Chair Jerome Powell too. All of this could be dismissed as typical election year politicking. However, the spotlight on the central bank is unusually bright right now. Inflation spiked due to the pandemic, but the Federal Reserve was slow to respond. It is currently attempting the precarious balancing act of bolstering the job market without driving up prices any further. This is happening while the independence that central bankers value is a hotly debated topic in politics. Members of the Trump campaign have advocated for giving elected officials greater control over campaign finances. The ruling party claims the economy is booming, while the opposition party claims it is foundering, as is typical in election years. However, the Fed's action has provided fodder to both sides. Outside of the global financial crisis year of 2008, the Fed hasn't pulled the trigger on rate cuts this close to a presidential election since the 1960s. Ernie Tedeschi, an economist who worked in the White House during the Biden administration, said, "The Fed is more politically vulnerable than it's been in decades. If they can land the plane successfully, the lateness of their initial response will be mostly a footnote." Tedeschi added, "But if they don't, it's going to be a cautionary tale in many ways. So, there really is a lot at stake." For now, and despite criticisms, Fed Chair Powell enjoys plenty of goodwill on Capitol Hill among lawmakers from both parties. Business Bureau report, WION World is One.
Let's now see what's making news in the world of technology. The British police are probing a cyber attack after an Islamophobic message appeared on Wi-Fi networks at the country's major railway stations. Reportedly, passengers at the railway stations who were trying to connect to the Wi-Fi saw messages referring to terror attacks. After the incident, the Wi-Fi system managed by communications firm Telent was immediately shut down.
Network Rail, the group which manages tracks and train hubs, has said the affected Wi-Fi remained offline at 19 stations after the incident. Communications firm Telent has confirmed that no personal data was compromised and has handed the investigation over to the police. The attack comes amid heightened tensions in the UK following anti-Muslim riots fueled by misinformation about a recent attack on 3 young girls.
As per Russian media reports, Russia's digital ministry has announced that Google is restricting new account creation for Russian users. Google has faced pressure in Russia for years, especially for not removing content deemed illegal and for blocking YouTube channels linked to Russian media and the figures since the Ukraine invasion. The ministry has also noted that telecom operators have observed a sharp drop in SMS messages sent by Google to the Russian users. There are also concerns that SMS-based two-factor authentication may stop working as well. According to local reports, the ministry has advised users to back up their data and explore other options for two-factor authentication or switch to local platforms.
The US Federal Trade Commission has taken action against 5 companies for deceptive and unfair use of artificial intelligence. In 3 cases, businesses claiming to help people earn passive income through e-commerce were forced to stop operations. The FTC has also settled with Do Not Pay, which advertised automated legal services, and Writer, an AI writing tool accused of offering a feature that lets users create fake product reviews.
FTC Chair Lina M. Khan has said that using AI to deceive or defraud is illegal and has emphasized that AI is not exempt from the existing laws. As a settlement, Do Not Pay will pay $193,000 and notify users about the limitations of its legal services. Additionally, Writer will stop offering its review generation feature, which some users have employed to create fake reviews.